why don't you start with just sharing a little bit about yourself and including what year you are at Olivet Nazarene and your major.
Yeah. So I am a senior environmental science major at Olivet. I spent my first 3 years doing zoology and then jumped over to environmental science for my last year.
Was zoology a major? Like, was that, and why'd you make the switch your final year?
So part of it was scheduling, but part of it was I enjoyed zoology, but I felt like the scope of it was a lot smaller than what I wanted to be involved in, because obviously zoology is focused specifically on animal biology and how animals are interacting with the places around them. And I was also interested in the places. And so moving over to environmental science let me get some experience with geology, with like water resources, and with more general earth processes outside of just how living things interact with the environment. I started taking the classes and learning about different careers that I could have. And then that sort of transitioned into this like love and excitement about like all of the earth, and particularly like caring for it, sustaining it. That's been a narrative that's been huge throughout my upbringing. I feel like our generation has like sort of constantly been hearing about these different crises that are happening related to the environment, like the ozone, and growing up in Texas, the Gulf of Mexico, and global warming, climate change, pollution. That's been really a big part of our upbringing. So as I've learned more about that, I've gotten a lot like more passionate about it.
So you're at Olivet Nazarene. You studied at Au Sable last summer. I think I remember you writing letters to people, sitting in Earth Hall. Didn't I come through once and you were sitting there by yourself? Just, you weren't texting, you weren't emailing, you were just had a pile, you were writing letters. That's awesome. Is that a thing? I mean, that's a great skill to have.
Yes. Part of that was because coming to Au Sable, I actually didn't know that we were going to have any sort of connection or signal. I thought I was like gonna not have my phone at all. And so I was preparing for that. And I was actually really excited about that. I was like, this will be kind of nice. Like just shut my phone off for a month and like really connect with the place that I'm at. And those letters were for my family and then my boyfriend at the time. And like sitting down every week, it also kind of gave me a chance to reflect over what was going on that week. And like I still have them. I keep them on my desk, and like it's also a great memory to have of my time there, to sort of read through and see like what was going on in my life, what was going on in my boyfriend's life. And like we didn't break up, he's my fiance now. I remember specifically times at Au Sable where I had my phone, and I think I was just texting and calling, but I had days where I was like, I texted my family and Eric, and I was like, I'm turning my phone off for the next 3 days. I'm okay. See you.
That's awesome.
And I would just like throw it in my dresser.
That's awesome. That is a great model, and it's something we try to encourage. We don't enforce it, obviously. But the fact that you did that, I think, shows a lot of discipline, and it's wise. So good job.
Thank you. Let's see, one memorable moment. There are a lot, like hands down, like probably the best summer of my life. And I have so many amazing memories that came from it. And I'm like trying to find an excuse to like come back. The other thing was like the integration days were really like surprisingly enjoyable for me. Again, I kind of came in with the expectation of like, we're gonna sit in a classroom all day and talk about this scenario, and then maybe like go out somewhere for like an hour and come back. But it was not like that at all. It was sort of these like all day field trips where we really got to learn. And it was again that connection between what we were learning and being there in person. I think one of the ones I remember the most was the visits to the farms. It was the organic, like more environmentally conscious farm, a lot smaller. And then we visited, I think it was the King Orchard. And like, that was such like an amazing experience for me, because like, I love the idea of sort of meeting like life with nature, if that makes sense, and sort of harmonizing the two. And like that day was such a perfect example of that for me, because like we got to see like hands-on like how our food was grown, and that there are choices we get to make about that. And like being there with everybody and like getting to like pull shallots up from the field and like working out in the sun. And then, you know, everyone sort of gathered at the end of it, and there were just like blackberry bushes lining the road, like in the forest, which I did not know was the thing that could happen. And just like sitting in the shade and all being tired, but all being like, you know, like we did this together, and like we got to have a part in this. And then going to the orchard and talking through how their process works and what they do and how they, you know, provide food and fruit and produce for that area. And then like going to sit under the cherry trees and just breaking out in groups and reflecting and talking through like there are ethics and choices involved in everyday things that we do. And like really thinking through some of those topics that I think get taken for granted or don't get thought through. It's, oh, I have food on my table. Well, thinking through where that food came from and what was involved in that process was amazing. Au Sable sort of built that bridge between and built that connection between this spiritual knowledge of this is God's creation and that sort of scientific knowledge of here's ABC, this is what's happening, and sort of connected those two things. And I finally sort of got to see like this is everything connected. And it sort of fostered this like equal care and sort of, I don't know if devotion is the right word, but towards people and towards creation. And ultimately figuring out how do those go together. And like that's sort of become like a passion of mine, and it's what I want to work towards is how does creation, how do people as God's creation balance and care for God, the rest of God's creation? I procrastinate a lot, like a lot.
What drives that? Like a perfection type thing, or
it's the idea that I will never do anything perfectly, and I won't let myself do it not perfectly. So there's a lot of stress that goes into like, oh, if I have this paper, I can't just sit down and work on it because I know it's going to take a lot of effort, because I know like it's never going to be what I want it to be, no matter how much time I spend on it. And so there's this idea of like, well, then why bother starting? And like, that's not a good mindset to have. I think that's sort of the mindset that a lot of people do have when it comes to big issues and environmental issues specifically is, you know, the little thing that I can do is never going to be enough. It's never going to fix anything. But in the same way, like with my education, if I decided that nothing was ever going to be perfect and never did anything, I wouldn't be getting my degree. And even though I've only been doing non-perfect things since I started college, like I've learned and I've grown, and like I am going to have a degree and I'm going to be able to do a career in something I love. And like I think that same mentality has to be applied to those sort of environmental issues, because the little thing I do may not have immediate results and not be fixing this big issue like I hope it would be. But over time it builds up, and you never know, 5 years, 10 years down the line, what effect it's going to have.
Sometimes people's faith is a part of the issue they grapple, like it's part of the problem. And how they view God and what they think God thinks of them. Does your faith help with this issue, or is it part of kind of your perception that is part of the problem? Like, is that part of the thing you have to work on?
So that has been sort of my faith journey my entire life, is sort of retraining myself and basically re-getting to know God and re-meeting him from this God who expects perfection and wants me to live a sinless, perfect life, to a God that helps me and knows that I'm a work in progress, and that in my faith, my value is not in, this perfect product or becoming this perfect result. My value in my faith is through the process and through that growth. And no,
I'm always encouraged looking at people in the Bible that God chooses to work alongside him, and just how pathetic and broken they are. It gives me hope for my broken and pathetic self.
Yeah.
That maybe I'm perfect. Perfect for that role.
Yeah. I was gonna say David's kind of my guy.
Yeah.
He was such a messy dude, and he's one of the big heroes of the Bible. He's one of the names that everybody knows, and he was such a messy person.
He murdered people. He was awful.
Take the time to know the place you're at and really know it. It's really easy to just drift through life, drift through people, drift through places, and not have deep connections with where you are. But those are so important, whether it's people in your apartment building, people in your dorm. If it's the location, go out and see the natural places, go to downtown, go to a different part of the town that you haven't been to before, and just expand your connection to where you are.
Right. What does that lead? Why is that important to you? What do you think that leads to? Or what is that pushing against? That most people don't do that. And what's the result?
I think it forces you to move beyond that surface level connection. And I think there's a lot in life nowadays that's very temporary and changing. We don't know where we're going to be in 2 years. We don't know what job we're going to have. We don't know if we'll have the same friends. And I think there's very few things in life that we can look at and say, this is something that is forever, or this is something that I am deeply, deeply connected to.
Cool.
And I think connections to place can help build that sense of deepness and importance.
Great. Thank you. Do you know, once you do get married, where you want to go, or do you have dreams of what you want to do? No pressure with that question.
I know.
But if you think you know, I'd love to know.
I love, I don't know if this is the technical term, but it's the term I've come up with.
Great.
I am fascinated and passionate about waste solutions and the idea of figuring out alternative solutions to the waste that we make.
What kind of waste?
So part of Au Sable, part of environmental chemistry, we visited a company called Clean Harbors. And the plant that we visited, they get contracted by different industries, different companies who are working on projects or have products that they're producing that produce byproduct, whether that's a chemical byproduct, a physical byproduct. The place we went to specialized in like fluid cleanup. But basically these companies will reach out to them and contract them and say, hey, we have this waste. We don't know what to do with it. Can you come in and make sure that it's not, toxic, that it's not leaking out anywhere, that it's, safe for us to produce this product. They also have jobs they do where they're counties or cities that are wanting to use a space that was a landfill, and they have Clean Harbors come in and basically like decontaminate the landfill, make sure there aren't toxins in there, that it can be turned into something else. I think that's really cool.
It is really cool and really important.
Yeah. And sort of this is where location is very important, but near and dear to my heart is the Gulf of Mexico. I love the Gulf. And there is a lot that is polluting it right now and ruining that ecosystem for so many different reasons. And like someday I would love to be able to work towards bettering it, whatever that may look like. So
thank you for your commitment to do that. Thank you for your time today. I will be praying for you. You've got some big things on your plate coming up, and I'm just grateful for you and your wisdom and your willingness to share it with others. And if there's anything we can do here to help you, we'd love to do it.
Thank you.